Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice.
Hey everybody, Chad Madden here with the Grow Your Practice podcast, and today in this episode, I believe this is episode 300 here at the podcast, and I wanted to do something a little bit different for you. So one of the stories that I don't think I've ever shared here on the podcast is how Breakthrough actually started. And I think it's a pretty cool story, and more importantly, I want to share with you how the needs and the wants of our industry of private practice has evolved over the years and how we've adjusted here at Breakthrough. So as many of you know, my backstory, private practice owner, opened up in 2003, September 2nd, 2003. And in the beginning, we were heavily reliant on physician referrals here in Pennsylvania. We did not have direct access until 2004. And I believe I was one of the first 30 or 40 DP, or I'm not a DPT. Everybody else is a DPT here, but I was one of the first physical therapists to actually get my direct access license in Pennsylvania, and I used that pretty much right away. So it wasn't a lot, but I was 95, 100% physician referrals, and there wasn't a lot of help for those that were marketing at that time. And what happened is, beginning in 2008, the one of three local hospital systems started buying up all of our the referral sources. So everybody from my family physician and et cetera. Now those three hospital systems have merged to two, and they employ about 90% of our local physicians. But in 2008, we really started to notice that that physicians were being prohibited after they were bought by the hospital system. They were being prohibited from referring out. Today, we know exactly what was happening. That I think from 2003 to 2014, there was a 53.6% decrease in physician referrals. And our industry was pretty much decimated with hospital systems buying the referrals of the local physicians. Anyhow, what that forced me to do during that time period, let's say 2008 through 2013, is I really had to start looking into direct-to-consumer marketing. And almost impossible to learn it within private practice. I had gone to association events, hired and worked with consulting and coaching companies, and pretty much everybody was saying, like, you need to get into with a physician. I was like, we can't. I exhausted all my tricks, and we can't even get, there's no communication at all with these physicians that are within the hospital system. And we just noted that there was like a gradual ratcheting of of what they were allowed to do. I mean, some of my great friends were in practices that sold to the hospital or the healthcare system, and they were like, we just could not get in, even though our kids were playing little league together and stuff like that. So in November of 2012, we had our two practices. I was pretty content, and the original goal that I had, I remember back in 2004, somebody said, this is going really well for you. Are you just going to open up 100 locations? And I said, that's not the goal. What I'd rather do is have one or two very successful clinics, and then I want to share what I'm doing with other owners. And I remember the person at that time said, that's a good dream, but that's not really going to happen. Today, we've had, hundreds of private practice owners fly into Harrisburg here, into our main office and tour the office and, learn best practices from us and go back and succeed in their own communities. And so that was the original goal. 2013, I was fairly content. I had built a sizable real estate portfolio. I think memory serves me correct. I had about 40,000 square feet of commercial real estate space, and plenty of passive income coming in, and I was pretty comfortable, and we'll call it content. And yeah, so November of 2012, I got a cold email from, uh, yeah, and it was unbranded, but it was somebody asking me about, if I would be willing to hop on a call because they wanted to learn more about private practice, PT. And I said, well, at first I said no. And then eventually I said, yeah, I'll hop on. But here's the deal. I'm only willing to give you 15 minutes. And if you like try to sell me anything or I feel uncomfortable, you just need to know I'm going to hang up. And they said, fine, like we have nothing to sell. And I was like, all right, I'll hop on this call. And that call was with Carl Mattiola, who today is the CEO of Breakthrough. And I didn't know this at the time, but Carl was living in San Francisco. When we hopped on that phone call, he was the head of online sales at Tesla Motors. And he had a pretty cool story and was doing some things that I had never seen before. He also had a little bit of a tie. He grew up here in Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half east of where I grew up in Harrisburg, Hershey. Carl's from the greater Philadelphia area, Phoenixville. And anyhow, so what happened during that call? I hopped on and he just started asking questions about my private practice and really the struggles that I was going through. And yeah, we were a few minutes in, maybe 4 or 5 minutes in, and I said, hey man, like, what is going on here? Nobody's ever asked me these questions. What are you doing? And I said, what are you going to sell me? And he said, I don't have anything to sell yet. He said, I work at Tesla. Every morning I get up at 6 a.m. and I interview private practice owners for 2 hours and then I go into work. And I said, how did you find me? And ultimately I asked, what number am I? And he said, your number is 17. And he said, so here's how I found you. I did a video screenshot. I made a video of me using Google Earth to find private practice owners. And then I hired 3 VAs. I believe it was in Malaysia. And after 1 week, whoever produced the best list and was able to run my emails. So he was using a virtual assistant back in 2012. Whoever does this the best, that's who I hired. And now every morning when I wake up at 6 a.m., I have a list of people to follow up with and these phone calls to complete. And I said, well, what are you trying to do? And he said, well, when I was playing football in college at LaSalle University, I was a linebacker and I had a shoulder injury. And when I went to the surgeon said that I absolutely needed surgery and my playing career was likely over. And luckily, somebody else told me to use physical therapy, and I went to PT, and I was able to rehab my shoulder, return that season, and I never had the surgery. And he said, it was a life-changing experience for me. So as I'm going through this other business class, it was called the Foundation, but as I was going through this business class, I wanted to figure out how to use my skill set as a software developer within PT. And I was like, man, this is unreal. There's nothing like this in Harrisburg. And then what I learned later on, so that was the very beginning. And what ended up coming from that is Carl ended up building a software from interviewing 300 plus private practice owners. And it was really a metrics dashboard and statistics input system around private practice dashboard with KPIs and metrics and statistics and a graphing mechanism. And that company became Clinic Metrics. And along the way, we just had kept in contact. And what ended up happening is he had asked for referrals to other private practice owners who might need a system. And I made 10 single introductions to private practice owners. And some of those ended up being the first customers of Clinic Metrics. So that was the very beginning. And then what happened is as I was referring owners that needed help with their metrics to Carl, he started referring people to me around marketing. And what had happened was after I asked him about the 17, and I learned this years later, but he said and I don't remember this, but he had said and shared that I was the first owner that he had talked with that would not discuss my problems. I would only focus on like the future, the goals in the future. And he didn't know this, but you likely can put together the timeline that I went through like a pretty rough patch from like 2009 to 2011. And we had just started to really figure things out with the direct to consumer marketing. And I was feeling pretty good about the future. Like I really felt in control. I was like, wow, I don't need to rely on physicians anymore. I can go, we had past patient marketing down, just driving reactivations. We had figured out a lot there. We knew how to ask for word of mouth referrals. That was highly successful and measurable. We started figuring out how to work with partners on a consistent basis so that they were promoting us. And we were doing a lot with cold traffic marketing, although it was all offline. I was very much trying to figure out how to do this online. And what he had said was, in the interview that he learned from me was that that even though I wasn't willing to talk about like my pain points or what wasn't going well, I would talk about like the gap in the future, like where I wanted to be and how I wasn't there. And he was like, ultimately, in the end, you're still talking about a pain point and something you don't have, but that basically that I was unique there. The other thing that happened was he was referring owners to me that needed marketing help. And I had no idea what to do. My initial thoughts were around that I would just license my content. So, I would sit down every month and write we had a physician mailer. It was called Positive Outcomes, right? And I would research and look up for information that was in physician peer-reviewed journal articles around physical therapy and conservative care, and I would summarize that research, and then within that same newsletter, I would also include like a success story of how we implemented that research, the intervention in that research, and help somebody get a good result, a good outcome. And at the time, we were probably mailing that out to, I'm going to guess 300 physicians. Today, we're mailing that out to 3,000, or the new derivative of that, the 2026 updated version. We also, did a patient newsletter every single month, and I had been testing that for years, since like 2004. I think we did our first patient newsletter, and really just was licensing all this. We developed an exercise card system. We developed, they're called top 3 exercises, which were our early way of getting around the hospital restrictions of getting in the doctor's offices. They would hand out these exercise sheets that we created. Again, it was a trifold brochure, but top 3 exercises for various problems. And that came off of our success on YouTube. Anyhow, early efforts, I try to license this. Absolute disaster. I was hearing, it was the pain point of somebody didn't want to sit down and write another email or create another newsletter. I said, here, just use mine. And I think we had a monthly fee around that. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it, because as soon as somebody would solve the marketing problem, then it would start to reveal, they really had a personnel or an HR issue, or they had a financial issue, and at the time they didn't understand how to balance. And I think we still have, not great in financial literacy as an industry, but so like some pretty desperate and dire situations, and I was spending a lot of time really for free. And I remember early, I was just like, and Carl and I had a crucial conversation. I said, I really don't want to do this. I don't like coaching owners. I just, like, all of my dream of like helping owners, like, this isn't going well. And he just said, hey, here's the deal. You're trying to coach and teach, and you don't know how to do it. You have the information. You don't know how to create awareness. You're thinking it's what you're saying or what you're doing. Like, somehow you're not saying the magic words, but there's a better way to do this. Here's a course, and I have it. I still have the course on the shelf over my shoulder here. And he said, you just need to learn how to coach, and you'll be fine. and present information. So I bought this course. I think it was $2,000, which at the time seemed like a lot. But I was like, I'm going to I'm going to give it my all here. And what I did was every morning, this is kind of a crazy story. I would run for I woke up at 3:50 a.m. and then from 4 to 4:30 a.m. I would run for 30 minutes, and then I built a sauna. Had a 2-person sauna in my garage that I had built from a kit, and I wanted to do like this detox program that I had read about. And so every day for 21 days in a row, I woke up at 3:50 a.m., ran for 30 minutes, and then I would hop in this sauna until 7 a.m. So 2.5 hours I spent in that sauna every single day at about 170 degrees. And while I was in there, I went through this course and I completed the course. So 20 hours or so, 15, 20 hours. And at the end of it, I was like, okay, and I saw all the things that I was doing wrong and wanted to get better. So from that, what we started doing was hosting a webinar. And I just started sharing and playing around with like the material of like, hey, what's really important here? And I remember a few of the things we taught in the beginning were the green ink letter, which is handwritten communication that you send either to the referral source, whether it be physician or a past patient who's referred to you, or the patient on their graduation day. And it was just capturing success that we had in our own clinic and sharing that with other owners. That the beginning, that really started to put us on the map, that green ink letter. And then the other thing that I started teaching in the beginning was the 7-step exam. And we called it the 7-step killer exam. And I started sharing these things that we had figured out in marketing direct to the consumer. And that resulted in the killer marketing course. And so I think 23 classes I taught maybe over 8 or 9 years. And in the beginning, Breakthrough was primarily an information business. And I just taught courses. So I've taught several over the years, that killer marketing. I think I taught that 23 times, and that evolved as we, worked with more and more owners and discovered some things work better than others, and technology was changing. It has changed over the last 10 or 12 years. So that was one course. We did profitability under pressure, max value, 24 months to all-star. Max value was about maximizing the value of your practice if you're thinking of exiting in the next 5 to 10 years. Profitability under pressure was around how to survive with the decline in reimbursements and the financial environment that we have. So we did a course around that, and I really enjoyed sharing what we're doing with owners. And about a year ago, because of the evolution of Breakthrough, we made a decision just not to do courses anymore. And I'm constantly out here sharing free information, whether it's speaking through the podcast, webinars, emails, whatever it might be, our events. We're just all about sharing free information with you that are really the best practices. So, this is just an aside, but along the way, the other thing that happened was because of the amount of owners that I get to see and hear, like I'm constantly learning. And really, if you break down like my entire professional history at Breakthrough, I do nothing more than clone. So frequently outside of private practice, I will see something that is very successful in practice and producing a positive result. I'll then take it back to my own clinic and implement it, figure out some things, and then I just codify it and share it with all of you, right? That is really my only role here at Breakthrough remaining, is get those best practices and share them with you. Along the way, Breakthrough continued to evolve. So in the beginning, and for about 10 years, we were primarily an information-based business. Well, back in 2015, 2016, I remember I was having some frustration trying to do some online ad stuff. And Carl just said, "What are you trying to do?" And I said, "I'm trying to run Facebook ads myself to drive to a workshop." And he said, "What do you show me the other stuff you're using?" And I was using at this time the CRM which basically is customer relationship management, or you can think about a patient relationship management tool. And it was a piece of software called Infusionsoft, which is renamed today. I think it's called Keep today. But anyhow, I was using that, and he was like, "What are you doing, man? Like, this is my world." He was like, just give this to me. Tell me what you want to do." And I said, I want to run these ads Facebook ads to a workshop. And he was like, "Great, figured it out." So he ran ads for like 48 hours. And this was at a time when Facebook and Meta were advertising was very inexpensive. People were trying to figure it out. So this is like 2014, maybe, for our practice. And it just crushed it, like 40 workshop registrants in 48 hours, like absolutely insane. And it was probably at a cost of maybe like $200 or $300, something that'll never happen again. Right. So it won't happen again at that efficiency. And so absolutely amazing. We crushed this workshop. And then what happened is I started sharing that through our courses. And then other owners were like, "Hey, all this is great. Patient newsletters, physician newsletters, green ink letter, 7-step exam, greatest promotion ever. All these things are fantastic. Partner workshops. This is all great. We want Carl to run our ads." So then that was really the second portion of Breakthrough that started. And for years, from I think 2016, we officially launched that to more than to the open market private practice owners. I believe that was October, November of 2016. And opened it up then. And then really most practices know us for that. At the same time, this was early. Carl was like, "Hey, like right now we're kind of forced to use this Infusionsoft. Breakthrough had just won an award for using Infusionsoft." And he said, "I think I can build our own CRM that's really custom to a private practice. And it's going to be better. This is better for all of us. Let me start doing that." So he had worked with an engineer in the past that Ed was the engineer's name was Ed. And so Carl started working with Ed, and they built a CRM specifically for private practice owners. And we had been using this, and that had developed over time. And today, the majority of what Breakthrough is that marketing software, right? And it's 3-channel. So when we think about, at least for my practice, how I think about it is there's 5 ways that I can attract a new patient. I can get a reactivation, which Breakthrough does, right? So all of our past patient emails, texts, we use the AI conversion agent. We named ours Emily, through Breakthrough, but we use that for, to keep in contact with 25, 30,000 people every single month, right? We're running all that through Breakthrough. And again, that has evolved over the last 10 years. Then the next 2 are word of mouth referral, physician referrals. Breakthrough doesn't do anything with that other than just share best practices, and but nothing in the 3-channel marketing system. And then we have partners. And so for us, pretty cool. I just happened to pull the numbers for this, but we have a full-time marketer, Eileen, who's really like a field rep for us, and she goes out. And our goal is for every clinic, we're doing at least one partner event every month. So that could be going to a large employer and doing lunch and learns. That could be participating in a health fair. That could be participating in or doing a workshop that a local gym is hosting us in, like the local YMCA or Fleet Feet, etc. You get the idea there. But we do one of those every month. Eileen runs that program, and we run all of that through Breakthrough as well, so that we're constantly capturing leads and growing that list. And then finally, all of our cold traffic marketing, we run through Breakthrough as well. So in the end, we have this one system that consolidates everything front to back, hits all 3 channels, both warm and cold, our patient list and cold traffic, and then also the partners. And then what happens over time is we're constantly building a larger and larger list, and we're communicating with that list over and over. And I mean, today, more than half of the new patients who walk through our door, at least here last year, 2025, half of our new patients were really coming from that system in terms of reactivations. So that's really how Breakthrough has evolved over time. Again, it started with a cold email with Carl. And really, if you know the situation, I think you can read his story. He was in the shredder with Elon and Tesla, and figuring out how to sell. Back then, it was just the Model S, so how to sell a $100,000 EV with a website. And I think he was tasked to create a website that somebody could buy that $100,000 EV in under 2 minutes. It's very much similar buying process today that you go through when you buy a Tesla, but he was there, and I think he was looking to do his own thing and make a difference within private practice, initially PT, and then it's evolved into functional medicine, chiropractic care, etc. But so thought you'd enjoy that story. That's how we met. Cold email, pretty cool stuff. Ended up both being from Pennsylvania. Definitely some stumbles along the way and obstacles, and I had to get my head right to work with other owners. And once I learned how to do that, it's been fantastic. But very much, hopefully, you enjoyed this episode and hearing the backstory of Breakthrough and how it came to be and what we've evolved into today with that three-channel marketing system and software where every practice can manage all of that in one place. So many awesome advances. I can remember just one more share with you. In the beginning, what really put us on the map was messaging. So I had figured out fairly quickly from studying marketing in other industries that, and I mean, this got this idea from Dan Kennedy, but market, message, media, match, right? So for any marketing to work, whether you're trying to attract a new patient or you're trying to attract a clinician to hire, three things must align. Your target market, that's exactly who you want to respond. Your messaging, which is the words and phrases that the target market uses, not the words and phrases that you use to talk about the problem. It's super important that you're using the words and phrases that that potential patient uses or that potential clinician uses, right? If you're hiring like a DPT, you want to talk about the pain points in the way that that person talks about them, right? So that's your messaging. And then the other one is the media. And so one of the things that we learned early on is private practice owners, when there's failure, they tend to blame the media type selection. They don't blame messaging. However, when we look at the failed marketing, nearly 100% of the time, I think it's safe to say 100% of the time, it almost always comes down to poor messaging, right? So I had figured that out early, even before meeting Carl, and used to write this long form copy. There's actually, this is a 6,000 word newspaper article that we used to run that crushed it for us for years. I think that's back from like 2011 maybe. So we would do this long form copy in direct mail, and it worked extremely well. So that was really my superpower back 10, 15 years ago. And today, with AI and Claude or Gemini, or take your pick of the AI tool you're using, it's easier than ever before to gather testimonials. They can even be 5-star Google reviews online from patients, and then writing very good, compelling copy using those testimonials and nailing the messaging. What used to take us months and tens of thousands of dollars to write and protect, today, my 20-year-old son can knock it out in 5 minutes with a $20 a month subscription to, actually, I think you just sent me something on Opus, right? Or he's really into Claude and Gemini as well. So yeah, the landscape has definitely changed. AI has done a lot with that. I would think more about it in terms of technology advances. The speed is much faster today. The accuracy is much faster today than it's ever been before. And the other thing is, you don't have to go through and reinvent the wheel yourself. And I know for some odd reason in private practice, we love to do this, but we're already time starved. Systems are already developed. And if you just continue to tune in here, we're going to keep sharing best practices from other owners that you can use to get your practice to the next level, create perhaps an element of financial freedom, some time freedom for yourself, freedom for you to leave the impact in your area, the legacy that you want to leave as well. So, all right, I think I went far enough here, and I've really enjoyed, sharing this story with you. Hopefully it means something for you as well. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, everybody. Later.